Tyler Evans didn't expect his morning to start with someone screaming, "Oh my God," followed by hot coffee splashing across the pavement and all over a woman in white. He rushed forward, instinct taking over. "Hey, are you okay?" The woman blinked, drenched in coffee, her silk blouse soaked, her hair sticking to her cheek. She looked stunned, almost embarrassed. I didn't see the curb," she said, brushing her chest, her hands trembling. "I tripped." Tyler pulled off his hoodie and handed it over. "Here, take this, it's clean, I swear." She hesitated. "I can't, you just got coffee baptized by the sidewalk. Please, take it." She let out a short laugh, eyes finally meeting his. "Thanks." He helped her to a bench nearby. She sat down, wrapping the hoodie around herself. "I'm Tyler," he said, crouching in front of her. She gave a soft smile. Mila Graves." She looked expensive. Even soaked in coffee, he could tell the clothes were designer, the shoes Italian. But what hit him hardest wasn't the elegance, it was the sadness behind her eyes, like she hadn't slept in days. "Are you hurt?" "No, just humiliated." "You're not the first person to lose a battle with a Starbucks cup," he said gently. "Trust me, happened to me last week. My jeans smelled like vanilla latte for days." That pulled a real laugh from her. "Thanks, Tyler." "Where were you headed?" he asked. "Meeting, I was supposed to pitch a funding proposal." Her voice dropped. "It's fine, I'll reschedule." "You sure?" She nodded. "Yeah." Look at me." He glanced back at the cafe. "Come on, let me get you a new coffee, it's the least I can do." "I should go. Look, I'm a single dad who works construction and barely makes rent. I don't have a lot to offer. But I do know how to make a bad day suck a little less." That made her eyes soften. "Okay," she said finally. "Coffee sounds good." They sat at the outdoor table while she sipped the fresh drink, still wearing his hoodie. "I really appreciate this," she said. "Most people would have just stared." "I'm not most people," he said. "And besides, you looked like you needed someone to stop." She didn't say anything for a second, just looked down at her cup. "Yeah, I did." He didn't push, he knew that look. He'd worn it enough times himself. After a beat, she glanced up. "So, single dad?" "Yeah, my son's name is Wyatt. He's 5, he's everything." "That's sweet." "It's chaos, but sweet chaos," she smiled. "Where is he now?" "With my neighbor while I'm working today. She's basically family." "Loves him like her own." Mila looked at him differently then. Not like he was just some guy who helped her, more like someone real. "What about you?" he asked. "You live around here." She hesitated. "Not far." He could tell she was being vague, but didn't push. After a while, Mila stood. "I should go. My assistant's probably panicking, and I should head to the site." She reached into her purse. "At least let me pay you back for the coffee." "No way, you're wearing my hoodie, that makes us even." She laughed and pulled it tighter. "Thanks again, Tyler," he nodded. "Take care, Mila." She turned to leave but paused. "Hey, can I return this hoodie? It's yours." He shrugged. "Keep it. Looks better on you anyway." She smiled, then walked away, disappearing into a sleek black car that had been waiting at the curb. He blinked. That car had a driver. Weird, but he didn't think much more of it. He had to get to work. That night, after he put Wyatt to bed and washed the dishes, he stepped out onto the porch with a beer and sat down, exhausted. His phone buzzed, but it wasn't a message, it was a notification from the community app. Graves Foundation awards emergency housing scholarships to local single parents. His eyes narrowed. Graves Foundation. He clicked the article. There was a photo. Mila, wearing a tailored blazer, elegant and polished. She was listed as the acting CEO of the Graves Foundation. His jaw dropped. She was a millionaire, and he'd given her a hoodie like she was just another girl who spilled her coffee. He sat back, stunned. She hadn't told him. She could have mentioned it, but she didn't. Why, and why did it bother him that she hadn't? The next day, while he was loading drywall into the back of his truck, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb again. The door opened. Mila stepped out, holding his hoodie. Tyler wiped his hands and walked over. "Didn't expect to see you again." "I didn't expect to come back," she said, offering a half smile. "You're kind of big time," she cringed. "You saw the article," he nodded. "So, you're a millionaire." "I didn't lie," she said quickly. "I just didn't say anything." "Why not?" "Because I liked the way you looked at me, like I was just a person." "You are just a person," he said softly. "But yeah, that's a pretty big thing to leave out." "I know." They stood there in silence for a second. "I didn't come to make things weird," she said. I came to return your hoodie and to say thanks. He looked at the hoodie in her hands, then at her. I wasn't mad, he said, just surprised. She stepped closer. Can I take you to dinner? He raised an eyebrow. You want to take me out? Yeah, I mean, if you're not busy or if Wyatt's okay. He stared at her like she just offered to fly him to the moon. You serious? Dead serious, she said, biting her lip. You helped me when you thought I was nobody. I haven't stopped thinking about you since. Tyler looked at her for a long moment, then he smiled. Okay, he said, dinner, but just so you know I'm not putting on a tie. Mila let out a real, full laugh. Deal. And just like that, something started. Something neither of them saw coming. Tyler had never been to a restaurant where the waiter pulled out your chair before you could touch it. The place Mila chose was tucked inside a hotel he'd only driven past, with Wyatt pointing at the twinkling chandeliers through the window. Now, standing at the entrance in his cleanest button-down and boots, he felt 20 miles out of place. You okay? Mila asked beside him, her hand brushing his arm lightly. Just wondering if they're going to charge me for breathing the air, he muttered. She smiled, not in pity, but with something warmer. You'll survive. Come on. The hostess greeted Mila by name and guided them to a table near a wall of glass overlooking the city. Tyler sat stiffly, glancing around at the polished crowd in tailored suits and gowns. No one looked like they'd ever held a jackhammer. I swear the food's worth the nerves, Mila said. Unfolding her napkin, he leaned in slightly. You come here often. Sometimes, mostly for work dinners I'd rather escape from. You picked it, though. I wanted you to see my world. Just a little. I'm not sure your world has space for mine. She tilted her head. You said that like it's something you've already decided. I've seen how these people look at me, he said, nodding toward a man at the next table who'd glanced at his boots. Like I wandered in through the service entrance. Mila didn't flinch. Then they don't matter. The waiter arrived, listing dishes Tyler couldn't pronounce. Mila ordered with ease. Tyler chose what she did, just to avoid embarrassing himself. When the waiter left, he crossed his arms. This is the part where you tell me why you really wanted to see me again. I told you, I haven't stopped thinking about you. You say that like you didn't disappear into a car with tinted windows after dropping your name like it wasn't tied to half the city. I didn't mean to disappear. I had meetings, and a board member breathing down my neck about a housing initiative. That article, he said slowly. The one about the scholarship program, was that because of me? She hesitated, then tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Partly. I've known for a while that we needed to do more with our resources, but meeting you made it real. You didn't ask for anything, and you still gave me your time. That stuck with me. He stared at her for a long moment. That's a lot of weight to throw onto a guy who was just trying to help someone up. I know, she said softly, but it wasn't just about that. It was the way you spoke about your son, the way you saw me when I felt invisible. Tyler looked away, jaw tight. People like me don't usually get noticed by people like you. You mean people who work hard and love their kids? He met her eyes again. I mean people who don't have anything to offer someone who eats in places like this. You offered kindness when I looked like hell and couldn't even form a sentence. The food arrived, cutting the tension. Tyler stared at the plate, artfully arranged, small portions, but it smelled amazing. After a few bites, he glanced at her. You're used to this kind of life, not always, she said, setting her fork down. I grew up in a townhouse with peeling paint and a mother who worked night shifts at a clinic. My father died when I was 9. My grandfather built the foundation. When he passed, I was 22 and suddenly in charge of a legacy I wasn't prepared for. That's a hell of a leap. It almost broke me. There were too many decisions, too many people trying to manipulate me. I've been pretending to know what I'm doing ever since. Tyler blinked at her honesty. Well, you're convincing. I don't want to be anymore, she said. Not with you. They ate in silence for a few minutes. The city lights glittered beyond the windows, casting soft reflections across the table. Tyler set his fork down. You know, I almost didn't come tonight. I figured. I told my neighbor I didn't want to get involved with someone who had reporters tracking her every move. She waited. And what changed your mind? He looked at her, really looked. Wyatt asked if I was going to see the pretty girl who smiled at me like I mattered. I didn't even realize he noticed. Mila's eyes softened. He sounds incredible. He's the best part of me. I'd like to meet him one day. Tyler didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure if that was something he could promise, but he didn't say no either. After dinner, they stepped outside into the cool night air. A sleek black car waited by the curb. "I could drop you off," Mila offered. "I've got the truck parked a few blocks over." She hesitated, then stepped closer. "Thank you for coming tonight," he shrugged. "Thanks for not laughing at my boots." "I would never." He glanced down, then back at her. "You're not what I expected. That makes two of us." She leaned in, not too close, but close enough that he caught the faint scent of something floral and expensive. "Can I see you again?" Tyler paused, then nodded. "Yeah, you can." She smiled, stepped into the car, and was gone. As he walked back to his truck, Tyler didn't feel like the guy who didn't belong anymore. He felt like someone who'd just been invited into a world he never thought he'd touch, and maybe, just maybe, he was ready to step into it. Tyler stood in the middle of the grocery store aisle, staring blankly at a shelf of cereal. Wyatt was at his side, bouncing slightly in his worn sneakers, humming a made-up song under his breath while clutching a box of Frosted Flakes. Tyler barely registered it. His mind was still tangled in the memory of Mila's hand brushing against his as she stepped into that black car the night before. "Daddy, can we get the tiger one this time?" Wyatt asked, eyes hopeful. Tyler blinked out of it, glanced down, then gave a slow nod. "Yeah, bud. Let's do it." They made it to the checkout just as his phone buzzed. He checked it briefly. Unknown number. He let it go. He didn't have time for spam calls or people who might want to drag him into something he couldn't afford emotionally or otherwise. The rest of the day passed in a blur of errands, spilled milk, and a scraped knee that required at least 3 superhero band-aids. By evening, Wyatt was asleep on the couch mid-cartoon, his arms wrapped around a stuffed dinosaur, and Tyler finally had a moment to sit down. His legs ached from work, his hands were raw from hauling drywall, and his head was a mess. He hadn't told Mila he was free this weekend, hadn't replied to her offer to do something more real next time. He wasn't sure what scared him more, how fast she'd slipped into his life or how badly he wanted her to stay. There was a knock on the door. He stood, startled. It was past 9. No one came by at this hour unless something was wrong. When he opened it, Mila stood there holding a paper bag that smelled like roasted garlic and fresh bread. "You live dangerously," he said, stepping aside. "Showing up unannounced in this neighborhood." She handed him the bag. "I figured if I asked first, you'd tell me not to come." He closed the door behind her. "You'd be right." Her gaze swept the cramped living room, stacked toys, a folded laundry basket, a mismatched couch with Wyatt softly snoring against it. She didn't flinch. "I brought dinner," she said, nodding toward the bag. "And no, it's not from anywhere that has valet." He set the food down but didn't open it. "You didn't need to do this." "I wanted to. I thought maybe you could use a break." He studied her. She looked different tonight, hair down in soft waves, no jewelry, wearing jeans and a simple gray sweater. She looked like someone who belonged in this room, and that terrified him more than the heels and evening gowns ever did. "Wyatt's out cold," he said, motioning to the couch. She smiled softly. "He's got your eyes." Tyler moved into the kitchen and pulled out 2 plates. "He's got a stronger stomach, too. Ate a whole can of spaghetti earlier and then ran laps around the apartment." Mila followed him in. "So, are you going to sit with me, or are you going to keep pretending you're not glad I'm here?" He paused, then handed her a fork. "You always this direct, only when I don't want to waste time." They sat at the small table, knees almost touching. She opened the bag to reveal pen with grilled vegetables and a loaf of fresh focaccia. "This from that place near the park?" he asked. She nodded. "Figured I'd meet you in the middle, no chandeliers, just carbs." He took a bite, then exhaled. "Damn, this is good. I remembered you said you like simple food." He looked up. "You remembered." "I remember a lot of things," she said, her voice quieter now. "Like how you looked at me like I wasn't about to implode. Or how you didn't flinch when I told you I was a mess under the polish." He set his fork down. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I don't want this to be a one-off dinner or a curious detour from your life." He stood abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "Mila, you have no idea what this would mean. I've got a kid. I've got bills that don't wait. I've got no time, no safety net, no private driver waiting at the curb. I'm not asking for perfect, she said, standing too. I'm asking for honest. He turned to her, his jaw tense. You want honest? I get up at 5, I work until my back gives out, and I spend my nights trying to give my son a life that doesn't feel like it's falling apart. I can't give you penthouse brunches or red carpet galas. I don't even own a suit. I didn't ask you for any of that. You didn't have to. She took a step closer. You think I'm here because I want someone to match my bank account. I think you're used to people falling over themselves to impress you. Then you're the first person who didn't. And that's why I'm here. He looked at her, the space between them now barely a breath. I don't know how to make this work. Then let's figure it out together. He didn't move, didn't speak. Then Wyatt stirred on the couch, letting out a small whimper. Tyler moved instantly, kneeling beside him, brushing his hair back. Bad dream, he whispered, pulling the blanket over him again. When he turned back, Mila was watching him with something more than affection. It was awe. He stood. He's my whole world, I can see that. She hesitated. Can I stay a little longer? He nodded once. Yeah, you can. They sat back at the table, the rest of the food growing cooler as they talked about childhood fears, favorite books, the time Wyatt tried to flush his toy car down the toilet and nearly flooded the apartment. Mila laughed until her eyes watered and Tyler forgot he'd ever thought she didn't belong here. When she finally left, her coat draped over her arm, she paused at the door. He's lucky to have you, she said. I'm lucky to have him. She met his gaze. And I'd be lucky to have both of you. He didn't answer, but his silence said more than any words. As the door closed behind her, Tyler leaned against it, wondering if maybe for the first time in a long while his world was about to get bigger. And maybe, just maybe, he was ready for it. Tyler adjusted the collar of his thrift store blazer, staring at the mirror like it might offer instructions. It didn't. It only reflected the same wide-eyed man trying to decide if he was completely out of his depth. Daddy, you look like a movie star, Wyatt announced from the bathroom doorway, hugging his stuffed dinosaur to his chest. Tyler turned, grinning. Yeah, you think they'll let me into the fancy building looking like this? Wyatt nodded with all the confidence of a 5-year-old. If they don't, I'll tell them they're rude. Tyler laughed quietly and ruffled his son's hair. Deal. The babysitter Mila had arranged a woman named Tessa with calm eyes and a background check thick enough to make the FBI jealous arrived a few minutes later. She greeted Wyatt like she'd known him for years, crouching to his level and asking which bedtime story he liked most. Tyler waited until Wyatt disappeared into his blanket fort before stepping outside. Mila's car pulled up exactly on time, but she wasn't in the backseat. She was driving. He blinked as she got out, wearing a deep navy coat over something sleek and black. Her hair was pulled back, simple and elegant. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a business magazine and somehow still entirely human. You're driving yourself, he asked as she approached. I needed the air, she paused. And I didn't want this to feel like a pickup and drop off. Tyler glanced at the car, then back at her. Where are we going? She smiled lightly. Somewhere I haven't taken anyone in a long time. They drove in silence for a while, the city lights fading behind them as the streets grew wider and quieter. Eventually, the car pulled up in front of a tall iron gate. Mila rolled down her window and entered a code. Beyond the gate stood a modern house with soft golden lights glowing from within. The driveway curved around a stone fountain that gurgled gently under the moonlight. Tyler raised a brow. You live here? Not anymore, she said, cutting the engine. It was my grandfather's house. I kept it after he passed. The board wanted it sold. I couldn't. Tyler followed her inside, past tall windows and wide staircases. The place was stunning, but it didn't shout for attention. It felt quiet and lived in, like someone had loved it deeply once and left everything in its place. She led him through a set of glass doors that opened to a rooftop terrace. A small table was set for two beneath strings of warm white lights. A fire pit crackled nearby, casting amber shadows across the floor. This was his favorite spot, Mila said, pouring wine into two short glasses. He used to sit here and say the world looked softer from above. Tyler walked to the edge, looking out at the city in the distance. It does. They sat, the fire warming their faces, silence stretching comfortably between them. After a while, Mila turned to him. I've been thinking about something. Should I be nervous? I want to start a new branch of the foundation. Smaller, more personal, something that doesn't get tangled in board politics. Tyler leaned back. What kind of branch? Focused on emergency support, childcare, housing, job placement. I want someone who's lived it to help design it. He narrowed his eyes slightly. You mean me, I mean you. And what would I be? A consultant? You'd be the heart of it. You know what it feels like to work 3 jobs and still come up short. I don't. Her voice didn't waver. But I want to learn, and I want to build something real. Tyler let out a slow breath. That's a lot to ask. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, just think about it. He looked at her across the table, the firelight catching the edges of her profile. You're not afraid of complicating your life. It's already complicated, she said. But I know what I want. He let the words hang, then asked, and what is that? She met his gaze. You and Wyatt. And a life that feels more like this and less like boardrooms and press releases. Tyler's voice dropped. You sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He didn't hesitate this time. He leaned across the table and kissed her. Not rushed or uncertain, but steady. When they pulled apart, her hand stayed wrapped in his, her thumb brushing lightly over his knuckles. Later, they walked through the house. Mila showed him a room with a wall of books, a worn leather chair beside a window. He used to sit there every morning, she said. He'd read the paper and talk to the dog like it was a senator. Tyler chuckled. Sounds like someone worth knowing. He was, she turned to him. You would have liked him. They paused in the hallway, the silence thick with something unspoken. Then Mila said, stay the night. Tyler blinked. Mila, not like that, she added quickly. I don't want this to end yet. There's a guest room or 2 or 5, he laughed. Let me call Tessa. He stepped out to make the call. When he returned, she was standing beneath one of the house's tall arched windows, arms folded, watching the stars. She's good with Wyatt, she asked. Yeah, said he made her read the same book twice, then passed out mid-sentence. She smiled. Sounds like him. Tyler stepped beside her. You really want this? I do, he nodded slowly. Then so do I. The next morning, they had coffee in the kitchen. By late afternoon, Mila was at his apartment on the floor with Wyatt and a pile of dinosaur figurines, laughing when he insisted she learn all their names. Tyler leaned against the doorframe, watching the two of them. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Weeks passed. The program launched quietly, intentionally, with Tyler's input woven into every decision. He didn't wear suits. He didn't need to. Mila made sure of that. At the opening event, Mila stood beside him as the first family signed their lease agreement. Cameras flashed, but she kept her eyes on him. Later, she pulled him aside and pressed a small velvet box into his hand. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single silver key. To the house, she said softly. All of it, yours too if you want it. Tyler's throat caught. Mila, you sure? She nodded once. I want to build something permanent. He didn't say anything. He just wrapped his arm around her waist, pulled her close, and held her like he never intended to let go. And he didn't, not ever. Tyler stood in the sun-drenched courtyard of the new community center, watching Wyatt race along the chalk-drawn obstacle course with a few other kids from the housing program. Laughter echoed off the brick walls as the scent of grilled vegetables and fresh bread wafted from the food trucks lining the street. The soft melody of a string quartet played under the white canopy, where families sat with paper plates and wide smiles. Mila stepped beside him, her dress fluttering slightly in the breeze, a clipboard in one hand and a nearly empty lemonade in the other. They're going to ask you to speak, she said gently, glancing at the small crowd forming near the stage. I told you I'm not a speech guy, Tyler said, rubbing the back of his neck. You don't have to be, she replied. You just have to be you. He looked down at her. You really think people want to hear from the guy who used to haul drywall in steel-toed boots? They want to hear from the man who helped change their lives. She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. Besides, I already told the mayor you'd say a few words, he groaned. You're lucky I love you, she beamed. I know. The short ceremony began with a few local leaders thanking the Graves Foundation and the newly launched initiative. When Mila introduced Tyler, she didn't list his title or contributions. She simply said, this man reminded me of why we do what we do, and he reminded me how it feels to be seen. Please welcome Tyler Evans. He walked up, heart pounding, and cleared his throat under the small white tent. I'm not great with microphones, he said, drawing a few chuckles. But I am good at showing up. And that's what this is about. Showing up for each other, for our kids, for the people who don't have anyone else to fight for them. I don't come from money. I come from long hours, scraped knuckles, and praying the fridge stays full. So I know what it means to be offered a chance without strings. That's what this place is. A chance. He looked out at the families gathered, then at Mila, who gave him the smallest nod. I never thought I'd be standing here with a woman like her beside me. But then again, I never thought I'd be anything more than who I had to be to survive. Turns out, surviving isn't the same as living, and I'm finally living. So thank you for letting me be part of something that matters. Applause followed, but he didn't hear most of it. Mila had stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him in front of everyone, and he buried his face in her shoulder, letting the moment soak through his skin. Later that evening, after the volunteers had packed up and Wyatt had fallen asleep in the backseat of Mila's car, they pulled into the driveway of the house that was no longer just hers. Inside, the lights were dim, the air warm with the scent of fresh linen and faint lavender. Tyler carried Wyatt upstairs, gently tucking him into the bed in the room they'd painted together weeks ago. He paused, brushing a curl off his forehead. You did good today, little man. Back downstairs, he found Mila sitting on the back patio, barefoot, legs curled beneath her on the cushioned chair. She looked out over the yard, where the string lights they'd hung themselves flickered softly in the hedges. He sat beside her, pulling her legs into his lap. You know, she said, her voice low, I've been thinking about something. Should I be nervous? Not this time. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I've been thinking about what it means to really build a life. Not just the programs or the foundation, I mean the small stuff, grocery runs, school pickups, movie nights. He traced circles on her ankle. Sounds like a life I'd want. She tilted her head up to look at him. I want to make it official. His brows lifted. You proposing to me, Graves? Not quite, she said with a small laugh. I want us to do this all the way, not just you and me. You, me, and Wyatt. I want our names on the same mailbox. I want to plan vacations that aren't business trips. I want to argue about paint colors and where the spoons go. All of it? You sure you want to wake up to me every day? He asked. I snore, and Wyatt sings in his sleep. I want to wake up to you both, every day. He leaned in then, pressing his forehead to hers. Then let's do it. You, me, and the kid. No more halfway. They didn't need rings right then. They didn't need a ceremony or a photographer. They had each other, a house that finally felt like home and a future that no longer felt like a question mark. Months passed. The program expanded into 2 more cities. Tyler took on a permanent role mentoring young fathers rebuilding their lives. Mila stepped back from the boardroom battles, choosing instead to lead by being present, not just powerful. The house filled with laughter, scraped knees, piano lessons, and a garden Wyatt insisted they plant, just for the bees. One rainy night, Mila came home to find Tyler in the kitchen, flour on his shirt, Wyatt standing on a stool next to him holding a mixing spoon like a sword. What happened here? She asked, setting down her keys. Your son declared war on the cookie dough, Tyler said. I was forced to surrender. Mila walked over, kissed Wyatt's cheek, then looked up at Tyler. I've never been happier to lose a battle. That weekend, they set up a tent in the backyard, roasted marshmallows over a fire pit, and told stories under the stars. Wyatt fell asleep between them, his hand curled around Mila's fingers. Tyler looked over at her. You ever think about how crazy this is? Every day. And you're still sure, she smiled. I'm not just sure, I'm grateful. He kissed her under the moonlight, the soft hum of the night wrapping around them like a promise. They didn't need anything more, they already had everything.